The Energy of Abundance, Practical Advice and Spiritual Wisdom to Achieve Anything in Life by Phyllis King. Chapter 13, Joy. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin said, "Joy is the infallible sign of the presence of God." I asked my daughter what her definition of joy was at 12 years old, and she told me it was being with people she loved, doing things she loved, and having a good time. That sounded pretty good to me too. The constant in her description was enjoyment of life, that there is an appreciation of things that make us feel life is worthwhile and meaningful. Beyond these sensory interpretations, joy is something we can have at any time, no matter what is occurring in our life. Throughout this book, you've read a lot about staying awake to your process. You've read about courage and determination to deal with your wounding. You've read about learning to tolerate discomfort and see the value in it rather than discard it as bad. You've read about inserting frequencies medicinally in your space and to take an active role in your healing and expansive processes. You've read that trying to control life is futile. These are the skill sets, the ideals that can bring us to internal joy. What's internal joy? It's a state of being that allows us to recognize the divinity and synchronicity of life, no matter what is occurring in our external reality. We see value. Unless you're an enlightened being, you're like the rest of us on the planet, inching along to a greater state of expanded consciousness. We all are thrown curveballs that test our limits, but they aren't really tests. They're opportunities to expand into greater levels of our ability to receive abundance, plain and simple. And joy is one of the greatest expressions of appreciation one can have for life. And when we become strong enough to hold that perspective, we're going to be joyful. Even when a sad event transpires in our life, our core sense of joy with living will not leave us. We then trust the abundance in the universe and we know it exists. And that trust in our relationship to divine becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and life will continue to reflect abundance in everything we see and do, everything we receive. When I was younger, I had to heal from a lot of childhood trauma. And as I was doing that in my young adult life, my navigation was a bit off, you could say. I was still peeling back a lot of layers of programming and trauma. So I created a lot of experiences with people who I now consider to be valuable stepping stones in my life. They helped me realize my worth and define myself. I chose to let it be that. At the time going through it, I perceived them as cruel and disloyal and untrustworthy, and I had to grow around those feelings. I had to learn what they all meant in the context of my life. But as I kept my attention on healing and learning the principle of 100% responsibility and participation for my creations, including my relationships, everything transformed. I went from having a lot of friends who were not good to me to having friends who were loyal, but perhaps not entirely compatible for me. And I continued to search and do my personal work. As I continued on, I have what it is I do now. I've created a world full of love and friendship that surrounds me at all times. My life is a complete reflection of my healed inner viewpoint about myself. I don't want for love and support. It is abundant in my life. My life is so rich at this point in time. I forget sometimes that people live in realities that don't reflect this type of appreciation and support because I'm not there anymore. I was certainly there a lot in my past, and my world reflects my growth. It reflects my healing. Life mirrors my expansion back to me. I offer this glimpse into my own life because the principles, practices, and ideas that have been shared with you in this book work. You may not have identical struggles or conflicts that I had. You may need to apply the strategies differently than I have. But the essence of this message is constant. The external reality reflects your internal reality. And if and until your life feels like you want it to feel, keep looking inside for your answers. Be courageous and determined, because it is your ability to shift how you see things that cause your external reality to shift. The practices offered in this book work. If you give yourself to expansion, you will discover your own strategies that work even better than the ones I've suggested. You know, my son was a thumbsucker when he was an infant. Took him a very long time to stop it. He had a blanket to comfort him since he was a baby. But by the time he was 9, it was really time, in part for sake of his dental health, that he stopped sucking his thumb. So for about a year, we started actively trying different approaches to help him, and nothing worked. In spite of that, I used the basic principle of going inside to help him discover his own truth. We would often talk about the need to replace one habit with another, and we had to find something he could do to soothe himself and to relax that didn't involve sucking. As much as his dentist or I wanted him to stop, he had to want to stop. I knew it had to be his choice and decision. It had to matter enough to him before change would occur. And that's exactly what happened. He began thinking about it regularly without my prompting. And often he would bring it up to me to discuss out of nowhere. But then a few months ago, he came to me and said, "Mom, I realize that most of the time when I suck my thumb, it's when I have my blanket with me." I had never noticed that correlation before. But somewhere in the discussion, he began to assume responsibility and take charge of his healing process. He began to pay attention to his own cues. He realized a connection. With that information in hand, we structured a system where the goal would be for him to only have his blanket with him at nighttime, and we would work our way to that end. So he began a self-monitoring system for when he watched TV, because he always had his blanket at that time. He began to take breaks using his blanket, starting with 10 minutes at a time. And most often 10 minutes would turn into 20 minutes and then an hour or more. But he began to develop a confidence he didn't have before that he really could do without both the blanket and sucking. And we created a rewards chart with different color stickers, and it worked very well for him. In a relatively short period of time, he was able to stop his thumb sucking habit. And the key information that caused us to be able to crack the code came from him. I didn't cave into the pressure and programming of experts who became militant and hyper concerned about these habits. I encouraged my son to find his own answer in his own time, and I trusted he would. And when he was empowered to do that, he did. This story is indicative of how shifts occur for all of us. Now my son has not only stopped the habit, but feels great about himself. I didn't shame him or punish him into stopping something he already wanted to stop. I empowered him to find his answers. I was patient and supportive, and he was determined, and he did it. So as we learn to embrace joy as a state of being in our lives, it is the little wins we have in life that formulate the foundation and teach each of us how to honor and appreciate our natural rhythms and experience in life. And when we don't fight ourselves or allow ourselves to be persuaded by external voices, our voice will always lead us where we need to go. That trust, that awareness brings incredible peace and joy. It's available. Another aspect of living joyfully that helps us create joy is to acknowledge our connection to each other and the collective consciousness. There is no us, there is no them, only one consciousness of which we are all a part. We are not the center of the universe. If we talk to enlightened masters about suffering in the world, why it exists, and why we as individuals are going through a divorce or the loss of a loved one, the master will tell us that they cannot be concerned with the suffering of one instance in one person, that they have the concern of enlightenment of the entire consciousness as their focus, that more is going on than our individual experience. Years ago, when I was working on my second book, The Heart of the Matter, A Journey to Wholeness, my mentor and editor asked me what my goal was with the book. And I replied that, well, I want to improve the lives of my children and my circumstances. And she said to me, is that all? At first, I didn't really understand what she meant, but she proceeded to talk to me about how prosperity is a shared experience. And if I truly wanted to be abundant, I had to focus on the collective, not just getting my needs met. As I meditated and pondered this idea, I recognized how small and selfish my original goal had been. It was a very limited viewpoint about well-being. And if I wanted to be abundant, my work and message had to be inclusive to as many people as possible. I had to have the best interests of others, as well as my ultimate goal. Through this broader contribution, my karma and destiny would be benevolent, and there is no other way it could be. Expansion is what we're here to do in life. It takes a lot of energy and can be tiring. Each of us is born with the ever persistent determination to eradicate suffering. Yet, unless something really forces us to ask, who am I? Or how is happiness created? We don't do it. It's not fun to be pushed to the wall to find out what you're made of, but it is a method that works. The game on the planet is to master the dance of duality. It is a challenge that requires courage. And when we talk about the idea of infinity, life after death, and reincarnation, we can hear these ideas, but inherently the mind and body cannot comprehend the eternity or the idea of infinity. We can hear these ideas, but we can only understand them to a certain point. Something else has to take over before we know it on a body level. We have to feel inspired to embrace expanded consciousness. Enlightened masters say the point of having spiritual leaders like Jesus or Buddha is to inspire us, not to explain it to us, because it is inspiration that helps move us into another reality. Charismatic spiritual teachers are meant to touch some part of ourselves that makes us realize what is possible. Therefore, they talk to us about God in terms and conditions we already know. For instance, we all have deep longings in our heart. We have a deep longing for love and a longing to be understood and seen and comforted. We want to be appreciated and supported. Enlightened masters will talk about everyday things we do to help us connect to possibility. They will reduce eternal conversations to topics like friendship and romantic love. Romantic love especially will move us into a discussion that allows us to talk about and have interest in enlightenment. All of us can understand waiting for love and having that special love come in. The heart understands that. The thousands of love coaches on the planet are a testament to this. In my business, it is relationships I'm asked about most often. And the enlightened masters, instead of trying to tell stories to get the definitions right for our mind to grasp, have us connect to the feelings we have of longing or disappointment, because these feelings speak a language the heart can understand, and they motivate us to continue the expansive journey in the human experience that we all have to take. And it's clear we all live in a state of restlessness to some degree. Life is not quite what we want. And many of us have conversations such as, should I settle for such and such? Should I try for something else or someone else? This job isn't what it's supposed to be. This person doesn't quite fulfill it for me, or I think I'll go over there and try that situation on. We're restless by nature. But wherever we're standing, it's never enough. So wherever you stand, it will never be enough. Because until we reach enlightenment, we will not feel complete. It isn't that you can't shift and try to feel a situation that's a little nicer and try and find one. But we have to contend with our internal world and examine our expectations and whether we're projecting those onto a situation. And when we focus on possibilities, whether it's a new love or a new job, we remain inspired to keep on with our task of expansion in the human experience. The embodiment of joy is the purest form of connection to consciousness I know. And when we allow joy to permeate our perspective, those frequencies bring more to the world than anything else. We unequivocally say, I trust and honor life. And there's a reason and purpose for all experiences. I honor that. And through that awareness, we connect more fully to God. In that connection, we know our purpose and we feel our impact on the whole. We are at peace. Joy is attainable. We should have it. And we can practice getting there through simple tasks such as learning to laugh at life. All of us could take a crash course in not taking life so seriously, even when it is serious. Still being able to find something to laugh about, even if it's ourselves, is meaningful. Practice spirituality. Walk the walk and talk the talk. Too often people use spirituality as a buzzword. They read about it in a book or talk about it in a group, then go out and express in the world as if no book were read and no topic were discussed with any person. And practice makes perfect. Being generous when you don't have to. Giving for the sake of giving is profound. That's the reason. Too often we give to get something. Getting is fun, but giving is the best way to receive. See life through the eyes of a child, or just remember to be childlike. Children see the wonder in everything and every moment. And when we slow down to marvel at all the miracles life provides, we feel happier. When we notice a beautiful sunrise or sunset, or appreciate the unconditional love in an animal, or look at the beauty in nature, we feel more connected to life. And it reminds us what a miracle life is. And that inspires us. All these types of activities help us practice the feelings we want to embody. And the more we go there, the less we will want to be other places. And that's the inspiration the heart needs to continue its journey to wholeness through expansion. With this said, I wish you joy, love, and abundance in all forms. And I thank you for the opportunity to share my insights and experience with you. And I look forward to hearing your stories and your comments. And I send you all my love and appreciation.